What's up, guys? It's Andy Priscilla.
This is Director X.
This is Amberly Lago.
This is Sina Sadaf.
Yo, this is Apathy of the Demigods.
This is Bradley and Michael Francis here.
This is Chris Voss.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna.
This is Ryan Serhant.
This is James Harris.
Hey, this is Steve Sims.
Hey, what's up? It's Billy G.
And you are listening
to the Run GpG podcast.
Stop playing. Please stop.
You could call our guest today the true essence of the American dream with an incredible life story and entrepreneurial journey. From a humble beginning as a young immigrant escaping a war-torn country with his parents to founding his own company and media platform, he has gained a firsthand understanding of what rags to riches actually means and how it's fueled by freedom and opportunity. Patrick BetDavid is a successful entrepreneur, best-selling author, and popular content creator committed to helping people get more out of life. Patrick is the founder and CEO of PHP Agency, a financial services organization and one of the fastest growing companies in that industry, as well as the creator of Valuetainment, regarded as the #1 media channel for entrepreneurs and business builders. He's also the best-selling author of the book, Your Next 5 Moves, which gives entrepreneurs and high performers the skills and methods to strategically plan the practical steps needed to realize their vision. I'm excited to get into all of that and a lot more with Patrick BetDavid. It's an honor. Welcome to the Run GpG podcast.
It's great to be on with you, man. Very good to be on.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on with us. Happy to have you. And, when I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking, where do I start? Because there's so much to unpack with your story, but I think it's essential that we talk about your background just for a minute to paint the picture of who you are and why you're so successful. You have one of the more compelling backstories of any of the guests we've ever had. And I think the majority of our listeners who are, entrepreneurs, sales professionals, business builders, they might know who you are, but I think there's a large portion of our audience that will be introduced to you for the first time today. So to break the ice, how do you introduce yourself? Who is Patrick BetDavid? Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, born and raised in Iran. I lived there 10 years. 6 weeks after Khomeini died in 89, we escaped. We went to Germany, lived there for about a year and a half at a refugee camp, and then came out to the States, Glendale, California, November 28, 1990. Went to school, joined the Army right afterwards, 101st Airborne Division, Air Assault. Great experience, 3 years. Got out, wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to be the next Middle Eastern Arnold is what I wanted. I was going to marry a Kennedy. I was going to be a governor. I was going to be a Hollywood star. And then I met a girl named Jean-Pierre at Venice Beach who worked at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, and boom, everything changed. Day before 9/11, I started working at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. I got my Series 7, the whole 9. And then went to Transamerica a year later, had a great run there for about 7.5 years. October of 2009, started my own insurance company. And we grew that from 66 agents to today. We have somewhere around 16,000 active agents nationwide. We've licensed shy of 30,000, and we have about 150 offices nationwide. And then accidentally started creating content, and that content, got some interest. And our main focus was entrepreneurship. We ended up having a few million subscribers with Valuetainment and a few billion online views, and I've interviewed a few interesting cats in my tenure as well, creating content. So that's briefly my story.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I do want to unpack a little of the early life just for a moment here, because when I was reading your book, you had incredible story, when you and your sister were escaping the city and the bridge blew up behind you.
Yep.
And like you said, you ended up in that refugee camp. And I've heard you say that you had some really fond memories of that refugee camp in Germany, which is a little surprising. Right. So what did you learn from that experience? Like, what did that help you tap into your instinct, as you mentioned, right? First of all, so it's a 2-part question, right? Like, what was it about that period that was so enjoyable, and how did it prepare you for a new life in the US?
I think, the biggest part was the fact that people from all over the world all value freedom. Mm-hmm. Freedom is so unbelievably underestimated, undervalued. When you have it, you don't even think about it. It becomes the law of familiarity. You're like, yeah, I'm supposed to have it. It's normal for me to have it. And then all of a sudden, when you don't have it, you realize how much you miss it. So thinking that there is a place you can go to that offers the kind of freedom you didn't have, and that's America. I mean, it was an incredible experience there.
So you escape a war-torn country, you're in a refugee camp, in your early years. Who did that make you? Like, who were you in high school? Because I think that's when you actually entered the US, right? Probably your most impressionable years.
Yeah. So in high school, I was a 1.8 GPA kid. I was a guy that always carried a jug of water because I was lifting weights. And there goes Pat again with his water. I was the guy that would come to school with 2 backpacks. One of them had the books in there, and the other one had hats. I would buy hats from my dad's 99-cent store, and I would sell it at school for $10 a pop or 2 for 15, something like that. And I was the guy that was always lifting weights, not good in school. I would take biology. My teacher in biology, I'll never forget what she told me, Miss Tiffany. It was me and another guy named Shant. She says, can Shant and Patrick stand up? This is when we're taking our finals. She said, even if you guys get 100% on your final exam, you will still not get a D in the class. So look, I just want to let you guys know, you don't have to take the final. And she gave us a hug because she loved both of us because we told good jokes. And then we celebrated leaving because my parents at the time, the divorce got me to be extremely rebellious. I really could care less about life at that time. I didn't do well with anything having to do with rules and do this and do that. I just didn't do well with authority. And that's probably why I desperately needed a little bit of military in my life. And I joined the Army a few months after graduating from high school.
You also got a D in ceramics.
I got a D in ceramics. I will never forgive that teacher. You know what's crazy is that teacher, I went back to that teacher years later when I was 26 years old and I was doing well in business. And I said, do you remember me? She said, of course I remember you. I said, I'm the keynote speaker in school today. There's 600 people in the auditorium. She says, no, I saw your name. I said, you gave me a D in class. She says, no, I know. I said, well, good to see you. Just wanted to come say hi to you. And we shared a unique moment together, but her and I never got along. I didn't take ceramics because I was trying to get along with her. I took ceramics because a girl named Erica Flores was in ceramics. That's why I took ceramics. And that was my only intention of going to ceramics.
I was going to ask, right? The struggle is real. The D in ceramics.
No, the struggle is real, but I had no intentions of being a, guy that does design and art in his life. That's definitely me. I buy stuff, but I don't create them.
So that's a brief history on the biography, the early biography of Patrick BetDavid. But I do want to get into your life as an entrepreneur. As you said, you had a brief stint in the military, and then you cut your teeth in sales first. I believe it was gym memberships you were selling at first, correct?
I was selling gym memberships. And I was at Bally's for a few months, wasn't good at sales. About a month after selling memberships, I was planning on leaving. And then my boss, Cisco, says, stick around. I wouldn't quit if I were you. He sent me to sell gym memberships at the mall, Fox Hills Mall. Wasn't comfortable talking to strangers. A couple of days after that, I started selling memberships. I became the rookie of the month, broke a bunch of records, and then I left Bally's and went and started a few businesses on my own. But that was my first experience I ever had with sales.
Do you remember your first sale?
Yeah, I do. It was a girl that I was flirting with, and we were flirting with each other, and it was right by the escalator, and she came in, and she says, I'll buy a membership. I said, you're going to pay $75 on and $32 a month and buy a membership from me right now? She said, yes. I said, you just made my day. And she gave me confidence. She sat down in the chair, and we had a 1-hour conversation together. Fantastic girl. We had a great time together. But that was my first sale. I'll never forget her. It's crazy you asked that question because I vividly remember her.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back and think about, where it all started. But you eventually became really good at sales, right? You became very good at sales. So what made you effective at sales, and what qualities or skills do sales professionals need to focus on to be successful in your opinion?
One, you got to figure out a way to believe the product. I have a hard time when people can sell anything. I can't sell anything. I can sell things that I fully believe in. That part to me, it's easy. I can sell gym membership. I can sell exercising because it's easy. I can sell investments because it's easy. I can sell insurance because I believe in it. I can sell entrepreneurship because it changed my life. I can sell certain things, but number one is you got to sell it. Number two, the best salespeople I know, they're great listeners. They're great at asking questions. And sales to me, it's a skill set. Everybody, if they knew the value of learning how to sell, where it would help them out. It would help you when you're asking for a promotion. It'll help you with parenting. It'll help you with in every possible way. So I think even a person that is not in sales would benefit from taking a year and learning how to sell and negotiate. It would benefit you in ways you never thought before. So yeah, the sales business I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I didn't know how to sell. No way in the world.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. Just, as a side point, we're really fast growing national brokerage. And one of the things that's interesting is the shopping behavior of consumers has changed. We've been telling our agents this for a long time. They're involving real estate agents later in the process, right? People don't want to be sold to anymore. The way that they're seeking information is completely different, right? You have to have a non-threatening way to give them information. They're actually involving agents later in the process now. But I do believe that sales skills comes down to, one of the biggest things is reading people, being able to understand personality types, not one size fits all. And a lot of the time you just touched on it, which is, salespeople try and sell themselves as opposed to just listening and finding out what is motivating a move or, a purchase. I think that's super important. Now I've heard you say this, that everything in life is sales, and you just kind of unpack that, right? Everything in life is sales. But then you got into the insurance and financial services industry. What was the genesis of PHP, and what made you decide to work in the insurance game over everything else?
Yeah, so when you get into financial services, you got different routes to go in. You can go money under management, which is kind of how I got started. You can do retirement planning, let's just say 401ks, and that's your niche. You can do health insurance, you can do loans, you can do PNC auto insurance, you can do life. I chose life because to me, the way I looked at it is every one of them has to do with numbers. So if you like numbers, you can go to any one of those things. There's numbers to be involved. But I wanted to go where people weren't looking. I didn't want to go where everybody wanted to go. Nobody graduated from high school and says, I'm going to go do insurance. So to me, if everybody is going here, this thing here no one's looking at, I want to go here. Okay, it's a form of a blue ocean strategy, even though I didn't know that concept for 10 years after me doing that. But I chose insurance for that side, and then I saw how noble the industry was. And then years later, I saw what the industry was lacking. The industry is, the average agent at the time was a 56-year-old white male, okay? 56-year-old white male, where the agency we created, is the average agent is a 34-year-old Latino female. We take a slightly of a different angle with that, but the insurance space was a space I got into, and then I accidentally realized the power of what it does when we delivered our first death benefit to a 19-year-old kid's parents, which nobody expected this to take place. And then obviously went from here to here. The rest is history.
Super interesting. So as you mentioned, the company now has how many agents? 16,000?
16,000. Yep.
16,000, 150 offices, right? So what's made the company so successful?
We have a real vision. We have a real mission, extremely urgent about executing our strategies. We don't know it all. We're constantly in the curious mode of figuring out ways to get better. At the beginning stages of it, we had people that were true believers in the cause. Everything's about willpower. Too many people emphasize way too much on skill. We put a lot of emphasis on willpower. Willpower is to develop thick skin, to toughen you up, to desensitize you of the day-to-day challenges of being in business, of being a salesperson, of being an entrepreneur. It ain't easy. And if you don't desensitize and work on the willpower of the leaders that you have in your organization, then the first challenge that takes place, first client that changes their mind that they were expecting a $10,000 commission. Oh my God, what am I going to do? That, commission was going to pay for my bills for 2 months. I was going to catch up and now I don't have anything. But then you can't hang if you have something like that. The only way you can hang during times like that is with willpower. So speed, focus, urgency, great leadership, and a ton of luck. I will say that as well. We had a ton of luck. A lot of good things happened throughout the time that maybe we were not expecting it. Some can say it's due to hard work. We work very, very hard. And some of it just could say we got lucky. And I wouldn't debate either one of them.
Yeah, fantastic. I appreciate that breakdown. Now, how do you see the financial services world being disrupted in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's all going to be technology based. COVID kind of accelerated the process because, if you were selling face-to-face, you can no longer sell face-to-face. People don't want you to come to their house anymore. They may want to come to your office. And if you know the people, maybe they're okay with you going to their house. But 70% of people want to figure out a different way to sell. They'll come to you, they'll do a Zoom, but it's not going to be a face-to-face deal. Knowing what products could sell online and which products still have to be face-to-face. There's certain things that you can do on your own, which will be more automated. Certain products, I don't like, for example, real estate. Selling homes, will it ever fully be automated? I don't know if it's fully going to be automated. Here's why. There is still a relationship process with it. Can I go there and just see the house and say, yeah, I'm making an offer on the house and that's it? Maybe. Is that going to be an angle that a lot of companies are going to take? I certainly wouldn't. We may be 20 years away from that taking place. Maybe eventually it's going to be in that angle, in that direction, but definitely not today. So if there's anything that's technical, emotions are involved, where somebody you need to process an issue with, probably is not going to go away face to face. Now, on the opposite side, the gamification component of any industry, those who find their niches, again, nothing's changing with the niche part. If you find your niche and you stick to it, and you figure out a way to be tech enabled and then figure out a way to add a level of gamification to your agents, to your sales folks, I think that's the direction it's eventually going to be going.
Yeah, it's funny you touched on that. I believe, the real estate industry, probably like the insurance industry, is incredibly archaic. These models were built in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So you do have to adapt and change. We believe that. Anyways, I do want to talk about Valuetainment. Like I said earlier, it's considered one of the top-rated platforms for entrepreneurial content. What's the story behind the creation of Valuetainment, and at what point did you start to create content on social media, and why?
Yeah, so behind closed doors, I always created content, but it was only for my sales guys. It wasn't public. It was strictly for my sales guys, and they would watch it. And then one day, one of my guys, Mario, who's now here, he said, Pat, why don't we create some live content? And I said, I really don't want to create live content. I prefer private life. But when I saw the direction things were going, if you chose to stay private, well, then the direction I was going to go was the world was going to dictate who you were. They were going to say, here's who he is, here's who she is, here's who, and then you're going to lose because it's going to be masses eventually, dictating and controlling the narrative. And I said, no, we got to kind of control the narrative and let the audience decide who we are. So we started creating videos. 2 Minutes with Pat was the first show we did for 2 years. I said, let's do 100 episodes, one a week for 2 years. We did that. And then we changed it up, and I wanted to change the channel. And then we went on our next run. We added a couple new shows, and then we went to 55,000 subscribers. So while this has happened, I'm like, I'm not creating content anymore. We took 3 months off. I said, if we do come back, we're coming back because we're going to build a real media company that's going to compete with everybody in the marketplace, not just a YouTube channel, but a real media company. So we wrote out 3 words. I wrote on the board. I said, so what do? We bring value. Okay. It's entertaining, and it's starting to become a movement. Why don't we call it Valuetainment? I said, I bet no one's ever thought about this name before. Well, again, being naive, there was a media company in Germany called Valuetainment, owned by a guy named Dirk. That's a publicly traded company. So you got to be kidding me. So I find the guy's email, Dirk. I send him an email. Dirk, I'm interested in buying your domain. He said, first of all, who the hell are you? Number 2, I own this domain. Number 3, I'm publicly traded. I'm not selling you the domain. I said, but if you did, what would you sell it for? He says, I'm not selling it. Anyways, finally, he gave me a number like $1 million. Like, go away. I'm not selling the domain. 2 years later, he sold me the domain for $27,500, and he changed the company's name to Valuetees. And then, we started gradually taking off, million subscribers, 2 million, 3 million. Now we have the PVD podcast on a separate channel. We have Valuetainment Russian that's got nearly 300,000 subs. We have a short clip channel that's got nearly 200,000 subs. But it started off just as, hey, let's create some content around the word of entrepreneurship. And then it took off into what it is today.
Well, it's impressive. And as we were talking about earlier, you have interviewed some of the biggest names in pop culture, some of the most relevant personalities, influencers, and creatives in real time. Now, of all the notable guests you've interviewed, is there one or two that stand out more than the others, maybe the most compelling? Now, of all the notable guests you've interviewed, is there one or two that stand out more than the others, maybe the most compelling?
Well, I mean, I'll never forget, I interviewed John McAfee, the late John McAfee. And in the middle of the interview, some guy knocks on the door. When I pulled up to his house, Mario and Luis go inside to set up the interview. He wouldn't give us the address till 3 hours prior to the meeting because I was visiting Arthur Laffer. Anyways, we eventually pull up to the house. Mario calls me and says, Pat, you may want to come in here. These guys got guns and it's very uncomfortable. So I walk in guy pulls up with a M16. Then another guy pulls up. Who the are you? You know, I'm like, just here to conduct the interview with John. Great to meet you guys. Who are you with? What's your background? What's this? What's that? I said, listen, guys, I was at the 101st Airborne. You were at the 101st Airborne. What's your MOS? 63 Bravo. 63 Bravo. Where'd you go to AIT? And then they thought I was, but I knew everything they were talking about. Oh, get the come on in here, man. Here, let's have a whiskey. Bring out the good whiskey. Hey, we got 5 prostitutes upstairs. If you want to go get some before we do the interview, you can. I'm like, listen, thank you for the offer. I'll pass. I'm going to do the interview. And while I'm doing the interview, in the middle of the interview, some guy knocks on the door. One of the former Navy SEAL jumps out with a gun at the door, and it's live. You can see that in the middle of the interview. That was fully epic, talking to McAfee. The great late Kobe Bryant, interviewing him in front of 6,000, 7,000 people. Magical. We had made such a great connection together, and things were coming together for us to do some things. But unfortunately, the event that took place, President Bush was great to talk to because he opened up about drinking alcohol and losing all those great years with his kids, how one day he's like, I'm done, I'm not drinking alcohol. He took everything and threw it, and then he became a president. Just the fact that he was willing to go and be open about it. Of course, you have to put Sammy, Michael, those names on the list. But Ray Dalio, I really enjoyed talking to Ray Dalio because there was a little bit of friction. We had a good debate together. There's many of them. But those would be some of the ones that I remember.
Yeah, I was going to ask you specifically about Kobe Bryant. What did you take away from that sit down?
The guy's, high-level killer instinct, dominator, obsessive personality, great memory. You call him out, you say something, he's not going to forget. He's going to come back and want to prove his point. Somebody you don't want to have as an enemy. Bullying the bully. He's a guy that's not going to back down. Backstage when we were talking, he spent 15 minutes talking to my son. When Kobe died, my son was emotional, Dylan. He's like, I lost my friend. My friend just died. I'm like, this kid made a connection with Kobe. Kobe's sitting there talking to him like as if they've known each other for years. Very respectful to everybody behind closed doors. But the guy's got fire in his eyes. That interview led to him making comments about Shaq that was shown on every ESPN, CNN, Fox, everybody emailed. Within a 6-hour span, we got 50 media companies emailing us to use the clip to talk about it. That interview probably brought, 400 total million views from different platforms that shared it, and a ton of conversations about it and controversy about it. But he's a unique one. The world definitely lost a very unique guy, because I don't think he was done. I think he was going to end up doing stuff that was going to be just as big as his basketball career, if not bigger. I think it was just getting warmed up. Yeah,
it was an awful loss, sad. I got to ask you about our friend, Michael Francis.
When Michael and I did an interview, Michael wasn't yet mainstream as much as he is today. Today, he's everywhere. And we were not, we were 455,000 subscriber channel. It's not like we had some stuff, but when Michael and I did the interview, he didn't know why we were doing the interview. And quite frankly, I didn't know why we were doing the interview, because I'm in the business space. He's a mobster. And I kept telling the booker, I don't want to talk to Michael. Anyways, eventually when we got together and we did the interview, within 3 days, I got an email from WorldStar. His interview was on the cover of worldstar.com. And then and all the hip hop community was fascinated by the interview. All the former gangsters were showing up and emailing us. Different people from the Russian gang, Russian mob, all these guys, Albanian, everybody had a certain level of interest. And it got, 12, 13 million views. And every time Michael and I sit down together, it gets views. People are fascinated by his story. If I would have told you when we first did the interview, it was going to turn into something like this, I would have said, you've lost your mind. But, that opened up an entire new genre of interviews that we did. I know we've done business, we've done finance, we've done politics. Never thought we were going to have an entire mafia series, and now interviewed Sammy the Bull Gravano, Phil Leonetti, Oscar Goodman, Frank Collada. Yeah, that opened up a new community, and it's a massive community.
Is there a commonality you see among successful entrepreneurs you interview?
They don't like to be told no. They want to prove a point. They're big on proving a point. They love it when somebody doesn't believe in them. Yeah, there's definitely a chip on those guys. I relate. I've been in that space for quite some time, And entrepreneurs don't like to be told you can't do something. They typically have an obsessive personality. The guys that make it at the highest level, when I say obsessive, I mean obsessive. Like my oldest son, he'll ask the same question 30 times, and it's so flippin' annoying when he asks the same thing 30 times. But I'll walk away and I'll say, let me tell you, this guy's going to get whatever the hell he wants in his life because he's relentless, right? The guy is just not willing to stop until I give him the answer to the question. And I think there's an element of that with entrepreneurs. I think there's a big element of that with entrepreneurs. But then at the same time, you have to know that there's some entrepreneurs that think, maybe let me make sense of this one here. In everything in life, there's levels. You can be a great baller at YMCA. You ain't nobody at Venice Beach. You can be a great Venice Beach basketball player. You can be a great NBA player until you go in the playoffs and you're facing the best NBA all-star team. You're like, I'm not at these guys' level. Everything in life has levels. Okay, you have to understand it. So there's a big difference between me being an entrepreneur and me being compared to a Bezos or a Musk. Not the same level. It's a complete different level, right? Too many times, the guys who are dying for everybody to accept them as if they're all at the same level, those guys are limited to growth, okay? Because the guys that I've met that continuously grow, they don't yet think they're good enough, and they think they belong in the circle. So it's the idea of, I have to figure out a way to get there. Man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it at the next level, that fire of wanting to get there, but I think I belong in that community. So there is levels to the game. A guy that makes six figures may be a rock star around his siblings that's making 50, but he's a nobody around the guy that's making $1 million. A guy that's making $1 million a year income may go to all the nice restaurant and tip big and drive a nice Ferrari, but he ain't nobody to the guy that's making 10 a year. So this keeps going. So there's perspectives and levels to the game. So he asked that question. I'm giving you the answer many different ways, but that's what I would say about entrepreneurs.
I do want to talk about the book briefly. It was during the pandemic, correct, that you released your next 5 moves, right, in 2020?
Yeah, it was. Good.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Can you tell us how that happened, what it's about, and why entrepreneurs and high performers should read it? I loved it. I'm an audiobook guy, so I like books that are read by the author, which was you.
Yes, it was. And by the way, that was 3 times of going there and 10-hour days of talking. But so why did I write the book? So to me, everything is about your next move, right? And I mean, everything is about your next move. A guy says, man, I'm really looking for a wife. Really? Yeah. You sure? Yeah. You're going to give up all those other, side girlfriends that you got? Yeah. You positive? Yeah. Once I find her, I'm going to do that. Okay. But if you do really want to find a wife and you want to settle down, what are your next 10, 15 moves? Okay. Maybe it's the community. Maybe you need to change your habits. Maybe you need to really be honest with yourself and see if you can drop some of the bad habits that you have of being single. What if you end up getting bored? What if you have a boring, personality that gets bored quickly? Should you get married? But those are the questions you get asked to see what the next 5, 10, 15 moves are. So if you want to start a media company, if you want to start a real estate company, what are your next 10, 15 moves? I've learned that the difference between 3 guys, all in the same space, they all work 80 hours a week. They're all workaholic. They're all approachable. They're all attractive. They all have charisma. Everything is the same. But one of them has a better method of sequencing their next 10, 15 moves. You cannot compete with that person. It's all about sequencing. So that's the whole thing about your next 5 moves, is to spend more time thinking about, is my next 3 moves the real moves, or is my move number 3 really move number 11? And I need to be a little bit more patient. That's why I wrote the book, Your Next 5 Moves. And I have the whole formula in there on how I do it myself. That's worked for me. But so that's the story with Your Next 5 Moves. It's
a really easy listen. Like, what I mean is there's no dry spots in the book, from beginning to end. I really enjoyed it, actually. And there was quite a bit in there that was pretty mind-blowing. Like, the one thing that was really surprising to me was your breakdown of how Steve Jobs was an entrepreneur, right? When you broke that down, shocking. I didn't really think of it that way, because we always think
the second time around when he came back.
Yeah, the second time, like, he's an entrepreneur, but then he became an entrepreneur.
You're right.
Really interesting.
And by the way, that's the thing when you make that point is this whole thing about everybody that talks entrepreneur, it really created a division between those who are doing a lot of the work for the entrepreneur. And one guy from IBM, I wrote about it in the book, one guy from IBM messaged me and he says, look, I feel like crap. I said, why? He says, I'm at IBM. I'm making very good money. Everything's good. My life is good. But I feel like I'm not maximizing my life unless I become an entrepreneur. I said, and that's when I sat back and I said, you know what? He's probably not alone. Here's a guy that's bringing value to the company. He's probably working just as hard as an entrepreneur would be, but he's feeling guilty. Does he have to leave IBM to feel like a success? No. He just has to. So that whole concept of entrepreneurship came up when that IBM guy executive asked me that question. And then it led into a whole new series of episodes, because sometimes you don't need to go start a business to do well. One of my friends, who's now my CSO, Chief Strategy Officer, he's 20 years my senior mentor, advisor, but I've hired him as a president and I hired him as a CSO of the company. We met 13, 14 years ago. He said, Pat, you know what's crazy? I said, what? He said, it took me 50 years to realize I'm a terrible number one. I said, what do you mean? He says, I've been a startup founder 3 times. Never once did I make money. He said, you know what's the most money I ever made? I said, what? He said, when I was a number 6 in a company. He said, think about, as a number 6, he made more money as a number 1. So this whole idea isn't about, I have to be the boss, I have to be number 1. Maybe you're not meant to be a number 1. And maybe before you become a number 1, maybe you need to learn to be a number 3 or number 2. Then you go to a number 1, because the current number 1 leaves and you replace that number 1. But that notion of knowing where your positioning is, like the whole concept of thinking, son, you can do anything you put your mind to it. That's not true. You can't. You cannot be the center of the Los Angeles Lakers if you're 5'11". No, mom, you're not right. I can't do that. I understand mom's trying to be, but a part of that compliment is also, it can really mess with the kid's mind as well. My mom told me anything. How come I can't do this? Maybe I suck. No, son, not all of us can do everything. Nobody can do everything. But there is something you can do to be the greatest at with the talent that God gave you. So that's the part that we struggle with, because I want to be like that guy. I want to be like this guy. I want to be like that guy. Maybe you're not meant to be that guy. I learned very early. I went to Mr. Olympia because I wanted to be the next Mr. Olympia, right? That was my obsession. I'm going to be Mr. Olympia. I'm telling you, I'm determined. I'm going to be it. I go to Mr. Olympia contest 01, and I learn about all the things that you need to do, put in your body, which I said, okay, fine. I don't mind putting that stuff in my body if I can win it 7 times, because Arnold won it 7 times. Not if I'm going to win and be able to compete. I don't care if I have to. They said, well, if you take it, you're tall, you're not going to live a long time. I'm like, I don't care if I live a long time. I want to be able to master being the best at something. Like, look at the mindset of a 22-year-old kid, how he's thinking, 21-year-old kid. So that is very hard for people to do, where you eventually find out your positioning. And a lot of that is covered in the book.
Are you a new real estate agent or thinking about getting a real estate license? If so, you're going to want to ask about the Greater Property Group's Agent Scholarship Program. Why pay for the cost of the course yourself when the Greater Property Group will subsidize the cost for you? Make sure you reach out and get all the details on the Greater Property Group's Agent Scholarship Program. You know what it did for me is I was from a company owner perspective, I was thinking, how are we encouraging entrepreneurship in our own company? That's what I was thinking about as I went through it. Who are we identifying? And, because we're encouraging, a lot of people in our company to bring new ideas and build out a new pillar in the company or something like that. So as I was going through it, I was thinking, how are we approaching entrepreneurship in our own company? So that was a big takeaway for me. One other question I want to ask you about with the book, you do hit on some key points in sales, specifically for the real estate industry, actually, really anyone in entrepreneurship, which is identifying USPs or unique selling propositions as key differentiators. Can you talk about the importance of identifying them to drive growth? And the reason why I ask about this is because our company is founded on USPs for agents to help them grow and scale their business. So I just wanted to ask you about USPs briefly.
Yeah, I think rule number 1, go read Blue Ocean Strategy. Okay, I mean, it's just simple as that. Go read Blue Ocean Strategy. I've done this meeting once every other year with all my guys. We just did one 4 months ago in Florida. I had all my C-suite executives and directors out of Dallas read the book, write about it, and come to Florida. I took them out. We had a 12-hour meeting, and everybody was supposed to give ideas on how we can become a blue ocean again. Because just because you were once a blue ocean doesn't mean you're a blue ocean again. Now there could be, your blue ocean could be a red ocean in your industry that you're a part of. So the blue ocean to me is not only the USP that you're talking about and you're asking about. How can you as an individual have a blue ocean? How can John working for David create his own blue ocean for you, where he becomes irreplaceable to you? How does he do that? How does he become somebody where you're sitting there saying, man, let me tell you, I really need John. And John comes and says, hey, David, I think I need a $20,000 raise. You're like, listen, you're right. Here's a $20,000 raise plus 20% bonus. Plus, if you do X, Y, Z the next 3 years, I'm going to give you equity in the company. No shit. Yes, absolutely. Freaking awesome. Why though? Because he is a blue ocean to you and he's irreplaceable to you today. And that's the idea of a company, product, service, selling. What can you do? Like one of the most common questions I ask for my sales guys, I created a sales manual with all my brokers in the company. And in here, one of the chapters all the way at the end asks the one question I've been asking about for the last 15 years. And you'd be amazed how many people are startled by this basic question that they don't have an answer for. And the question is, why should someone work with you? Why should someone be your customer? Try answering that. Well, what do you mean? Exactly. Answer it. Why should someone work for you? In what way does my life become better by being your salesperson? In what way does my life become better by being your customer? In what way do you improve my life? In what way do I get better? And when you go through that exercise and you start writing things down and you say, why should somebody be your friend? Oh, I'm fun. Okay, cool. That's big. What else? I tell good jokes. Okay, humor's great. What else? People trust me. Do they really though? I think so. Tell me why. Well, when this happened, you ask 5 people. You're right. People trust you. That's a high value. What else? I'm a big thinker and I try to figure out a way to challenge my friends to also think big. Cool. What else? Why should you be a CEO? Why should someone work with you? I don't have an answer to that question. Well, then why don't you go figure out reasons why somebody ought to work with you in your company? Go figure out reasons why somebody ought to be your customer. Go figure out reasons why I, as the customer who's about to buy a $5 million home, and I got 6,000 realtors around my community, the top 1%, which is 60 in the community, who are all capable of selling me this $5 million home, why should I come to you? I don't know if that answered your question for you, because I took slightly a different angle with that, because too often all we think about is how lucky the customers to work with us, how amazing we are because I'm this, I'm that. But if you flip it on you and you ask that question, you will be amazed on how different you will look at the world. Rather than what everybody can do for you, it becomes more about what you can do for others. And people kind of want to work with people that want to do things for them in a positive way.
No, you nailed it. Answering the question, what's in it for me? Every salesperson needs to answer that. I've got a couple of wrap-up questions for you if you've got the time. I hope that's okay. How do you deal with pressure?
Great question. You just have to understand that in life you have a pendulum. Okay, and here's what the pendulum looks like. The higher you move up, the bigger vision you got, the more pressure that comes with it. The less pressure you want, don't have a big vision. Have a simple vision, have a simple life you live, and you don't have to have that pressure. My dad told me one thing one time, the guy's like a philosopher. He said, be careful reading books. I said, what? He said, be careful reading a lot of books. He says, I'm always seeing you reading books like you're never taking a break. Be careful reading books. I said, tell me why to be careful. He says, because the happiest friend I have, his name is Albert. He said, Albert is happy and he has no clue what the hell is going on in the world because he's never read a book. He never did anything. He doesn't know about, taxes, global warming, war, all this stuff. He's just a happy guy. He says, the people that read a lot, learn a lot, their brain never stops. And a little bit of happiness goes away because now you feel like you have a responsibility to do something with that knowledge that you possess. So again, I don't know if that answers your question for you, but to handle pressure is if you got a big vision, it kind of comes with the territory. Also, I've noticed you've been pretty vocal lately regarding politics, or maybe you always have been, just people are paying closer attention now. Where do you see America in the next decade if things don't improve? I know that might be a long answer. And are you gearing up for a political run? No, I'm going to be a guy that's going to help a lot of people run, and a lot of people will come through me. I'll be a kingmaker all day long. I'm a good guy to be in whoever's ear that's running strategically. that'll be an area that I can help out a lot of qualified candidates. But in regards to where America is going, unfortunately, I did a video yesterday with the biggest threats in America, and I wrote out 18 lists, not even the obvious I set aside, which is China, common sense, self, virtual government, social media, all that stuff. And then I wrote the other stuff that's not so obvious. We are in a very hypersensitive community era. We're in an era where everybody cannot handle opposing ideas. People don't like opposing ideas. The incentive structure is changing. Back in the days, you got incentivized to work hard and create something. Today, you're being incentivized if you stay home and not do anything and care more about your happiness, while the person that's going out there and creating, he's being demonized. So we've completely restructured incentivizing the right behavior. And now we're incentivizing the bad behavior, which is going to lead to a lot of interesting people in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But I think America could go in one of two directions. Either a synergist could show up that brings everybody together. And I thought that was going to happen during COVID, because last time 9/11 happened, everybody in America, nobody gave a if you were white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Republican, Democrat, Independent. We were the United States of America because we had a common enemy, and that was the common enemy. But when COVID happened, rather than making China the common enemy, they made Trump the enemy, and that divided America, protesting, riots. It was a collapse. So that told you that politicians are more concerned about their party than America. It's very scary where your party matters more to you than your country, because when you go that direction, unfortunately, you're giving birth to a lot of divide and conquer, division, fights, wars, unnecessary. That's where we're going. There's a 20% chance a person like AOC could get elected to office the next 20 years. I think it's very realistic for a person like that to get elected and try to completely revamp the system that we have in America. And there's a very also high likelihood for synergists to show up. I think who shows up between the two is when an equal opportunity competition shows up for Facebook, Twitter, somebody that's also allowing opposing ideas to be entertained. If we don't entertain opposing ideas and everything's about censorship, it's going to be a very weird time. But regardless of it, my level of optimism comes from this. Free thinkers have one thing in common. They don't get bullied. Free thinkers value freedom more than their money. Free thinkers are experts at bullying the bully. Free thinkers don't want to bully anybody. But if you cross the line and you mess with their freedom, they're capable of doing very bad things to you and exploiting you and exposing you in ways that nobody's ever done to you. So they keep bullying the free thinker. And I think the free thinker society and community is about to have a massive wake-up call, and it ain't going to be pretty.
Fascinating breakdown. Final question, Patrick. You're opening a bottle of champagne 1 year from now, celebrating something you've accomplished. What would that be?
It's going to be 7 weeks from now, and I cannot tell you. But 1 year from now, if I'm opening up a bottle of, they can come in, by the way. If I'm opening up a bottle to celebrate something 12 months from now, Kai, 12 months from now, if we open up a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating 12 months from now?
12 months from now?
Yeah.
10 million subs?
10 million subs? I don't know, but it would be, we have a lot of big things we're working on, so it couldn't be one or the other. Just stay tuned is all I will say, because if the man upstairs keeps us healthy, the next 20, 40 years is going to be very entertaining.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, a lot of people, they have a hard time answering that because they're always doing things, especially entrepreneurs. But anyways, Patrick, thank you so much for your time today. Really compelling conversation. So good to get to know you a little bit better and in some detail. Inspiring, fantastic business advice. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Peace.